Welcome to another episode of Mastering Cybersecurity, developed by BareMetalCyber.com. Let's dive in.
Disabling a departing employee's main account can feel like the end of the access removal process, but it is often only the most visible step. The practical question is whether the person can still reach organizational systems, data, devices, or services through any other path. Account deprovisioning addresses that broader question by removing or changing access when someone leaves, transfers, changes duties, or no longer needs a particular privilege. A weak deprovisioning process leaves behind quiet forms of access that may not appear in the primary directory at all. By the end of this episode, you should be able to explain what deprovisioning includes, why one disabled account is rarely enough, and how an organization can verify that access has actually been reduced to the correct level. Account deprovisioning is the controlled removal, suspension, or modification of access that is no longer authorized. It is related to offboarding, but the two terms are not identical because offboarding may include payroll, equipment return, records, and other administrative tasks, while deprovisioning focuses specifically on access. It also applies when a person stays with the organization but changes roles, projects, locations, or responsibilities. The central distinction is that disabling an account changes the status of one identity record, while deprovisioning addresses the person's complete access footprint. That footprint can include directory accounts, application accounts, cloud permissions, group memberships, active sessions, device access, locally stored credentials, and secrets the person already knows. Deprovisioning is complete only when the remaining access matches the person's current authorization. The first challenge is discovering every identity and access path connected to the person. Many organizations have a primary directory or identity provider that controls common services, but not every application uses it. Some systems maintain local accounts, some cloud services allow direct invitations, and some tools are purchased or administered by individual departments. Access may also be granted through security groups, mailing lists, project workspaces, source code repositories, remote access services, support portals, and vendor platforms. A central account can therefore be disabled while separate accounts remain active elsewhere. Effective deprovisioning depends on an inventory that connects people to systems, accounts, roles, and owners. Without that visibility, the process becomes a collection of assumptions, and the organization may close the account it knows about while missing the access that presents the greater risk. Role changes require as much attention as departures because deprovisioning does not always mean removing everything. When responsibilities change, the correct action is usually to remove access tied to the old role and preserve or add only what the new role requires. Organizations often focus on granting the new permissions and delay removing the old ones, which creates privilege accumulation over time. A person may gradually retain access from several previous assignments, even though none of it is still necessary. That condition increases the potential damage from mistakes, compromised credentials, or misuse because the account can reach more systems than the current job requires. Good deprovisioning treats a transfer as an authorization change, not merely an administrative update. The decision should be based on current duties, approved ownership, and the principle that access should remain only while there is a valid business need. Applications and cloud services create a second layer of difficulty because the relationship between a central identity and an individual service is not always straightforward. A federated application may rely on the organization's identity provider for login, which can make central disabling effective, but the service may still contain local roles, recovery methods, personal access tokens, or alternate administrator accounts. Other services may never have been connected to central identity management. Direct invitations, guest access, personal email addresses, and department-managed subscriptions can all create separate paths that are easy to overlook. Deprovisioning therefore requires application owners to confirm what access exists inside the service, not merely whether the primary login has been disabled. The important question is not whether the account appears inactive in one system. The important question is whether the person still possesses any valid method of reaching the application or its data. Active sessions are another reason account disabling may not produce immediate loss of access. Many applications issue session cookies or tokens after a successful login, so the user does not need to authenticate again for every action. Depending on the application, an existing session may remain usable until it expires, is revoked, or is otherwise invalidated. Mobile applications, browser sessions, command line tools, and synchronized clients may each maintain their own authenticated state. Changing a password or disabling the central account does not automatically guarantee that every service will terminate those sessions. A complete deprovisioning action should therefore include session revocation where the technology supports it, along with removal of refresh tokens, personal access tokens, application passwords, and other reusable credentials. The aim is to close both future login attempts and access that was already established before the authorization changed.
Devices also carry access that may survive changes to a central account. A managed laptop or phone can contain cached credentials, downloaded files, encryption keys, certificates, browser sessions, virtual private network profiles, and applications that remain signed in. An organization may need to recover the device, block it from management systems, revoke its certificates, remove it from trusted device lists, or erase organizational data according to policy and technical capability. Local administrator accounts and offline copies of information deserve particular attention because they may not depend on a live connection to the identity provider. Device return is therefore not merely an asset management task. It is part of access removal because possession of the device may preserve a practical route to systems or data. Deprovisioning should account for what the device can still do, not just who is listed as its assigned user.
Before we continue, this episode is brought to you by the Bare Metal Cyber Academy. The Academy provides a place for people who want to continue developing practical cybersecurity knowledge through clear, structured education. Topics such as identity management, access control, risk, and security operations become more useful when they are explained in a way that connects concepts to real professional decisions. The emphasis is on practical understanding that can support better questions, clearer decisions, and continued professional growth. You can visit BareMetalCyber.com and explore the Academy to see the learning opportunities currently available. Now, let's return to account deprovisioning and the access paths that are easiest to miss. Shared credentials present a different problem because the access may not belong to the departing person's named account. Team passwords, generic administrator accounts, shared mailboxes, common service logins, recovery codes, and credentials stored outside an approved vault can remain usable after the individual identity is disabled. Removing the person from a password manager or access group may prevent future retrieval, but it does not erase a secret the person already learned or copied. When someone who knew a shared credential no longer needs it, the organization may need to rotate that credential and update every authorized system or user that depends on it. Shared access should also have a clear owner who can confirm who still needs it. Deprovisioning fails when it assumes that named accounts represent every form of authorization, because knowledge of a valid secret can function as access even without a personal account. Non-human accounts and automation can also be tied to a person in ways that are not obvious. A user may create an application programming interface key, scheduled task, integration, script, cloud resource, or service account to support legitimate work. The technical identity may continue operating after the person leaves, yet nobody else may understand its purpose, permissions, dependencies, or renewal process. Simply deleting it could interrupt a business function, while leaving it unmanaged can create an orphaned credential with excessive access. Deprovisioning should therefore identify resources owned or maintained by the person, transfer legitimate ownership, document dependencies, and remove credentials that no longer serve an approved purpose. The goal is not to preserve every technical artifact indefinitely. It is to ensure that continuing automation has an accountable owner and that unnecessary machine access does not survive merely because it was never connected to the personnel process. A dependable deprovisioning process requires coordination because no single team sees the entire access picture. Human resources or another personnel authority may provide the trigger. The manager may confirm current duties. Information technology may control central accounts and devices. Security may oversee higher risk access, and application owners may manage permissions inside specialized systems. The process works best when the change in employment or responsibility reaches those owners through a defined and timely workflow. Timing should reflect risk, especially for privileged access, sensitive data, remote connectivity, and unexpected separations. Coordination also prevents a different failure, which is removing access without transferring records, approvals, queues, or operational ownership that the organization still needs. Deprovisioning is a security control, but it must be executed with enough context to remove authorization without losing accountability or disrupting necessary work.
One common mistake is treating deletion as the preferred first action. Immediate deletion can remove evidence, break ownership relationships, disrupt retention requirements, or make it harder to transfer files and responsibilities. In many environments, the safer sequence is to disable or suspend access, terminate sessions, preserve required records, transfer ownership, and then delete the account later according to policy. Another mistake is assuming that centralized sign-on reaches every application, especially older tools, department-managed services, and external platforms. Organizations also overlook contractors, vendors, interns, temporary workers, and guests because their lifecycle may not follow the same personnel system as employees. The correct process should be based on authorization and access, not employment category alone. Anyone who's approved relationship changes may require deprovisioning, even when no traditional resignation or termination event occurs. Verification separates a completed deprovisioning process from a ticket that was merely closed. The organization should be able to show that the triggering event was received, the relevant accounts were identified, required actions were assigned, and high-risk access was removed within the expected time. Evidence may include account status, group membership changes, revoked sessions, token removal, device actions, credential rotation, ownership transfer, and confirmation from application owners. Logs can help determine whether an account or session was used after the effective time of the change. Follow-up review is especially valuable when the person had privileged, cloud, financial, development, or remote access. Verification does not require every organization to use the same tool, but it does require an objective way to test whether the intended access change actually occurred. A checklist alone is not proof when the underlying inventory is incomplete or the actions were never confirmed. A practical way to apply the lesson is to begin with the person's current authorization and trace every route by which that authorization is expressed. Ask which central identities exist, which applications maintain local accounts, which groups and roles grant indirect access, which sessions or tokens may remain active, which devices are trusted, and which shared secrets the person could still use. Then identify the owner of each access path and the action needed to remove, reduce, transfer, or preserve it. After the changes are made, verify the result from the system itself rather than relying only on a request or confirmation message. For a role change, compare the final access set with the new responsibilities. For a departure, confirm that no remaining path depends on the person's former relationship. This method turns deprovisioning from a single account action into a testable access decision. Account deprovisioning is the process of removing or changing every form of access that is no longer authorized when a person leaves or changes responsibilities. Disabling the primary account is important, but it does not by itself address separate application accounts, cloud roles, active sessions, trusted devices, shared credentials, tokens, automation, or ownership of technical resources. A complete process starts with a reliable trigger, uses an accurate view of the person's access footprint, assigns actions to the right system owners, and verifies the result. It also preserves necessary records and transfers legitimate responsibilities before deletion occurs. The central decision is straightforward. Compare the access that remains with the access the person is currently allowed to have. Deprovisioning is finished only when those two things match and the organization has evidence that the change actually took effect.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.